Okay, so I make it 11 o'clock on the dot, so we will get today's webinar underway. Harry, have we had any joy getting the chat working?
Unfortunately not, no.
Yeah, that's annoying. Okay, all right. Well, we do have the Q&A facility, so if you do want to ask us anything, then we'll need to use the Q&A, and I believe I will be able to unmute people as well if need be. So let's start, shall we? Thank you all for joining me today. My name's Dan Hare. I'm one of the senior team at eShot, and today's webinar topic is perfectly formed forms. The design area of eShot where you do emails is where you spend the majority of your time, and we know because we've got the data, actually not many of our customers spend much time in the forms section because it is one of those areas of eShot that to some extent you can set and forget. My hope and expectation today is I will show you some things which will hopefully get you to think about what else you can do with sign up forms. We're going to break the session into the following agenda points. I'm going to give you an overview of the features that are available. I'm then going to, and we'll look at the various different components of sign up forms in that feature overview, sign up forms, preference center, and indeed landing pages. We're also going to look at best practices. So we will, have a look at what is going on within your account at the moment. And just to kind of set the tone for today, I'm sure this is a daft question: who has an email sign-up form on their website? But let's ask another question. There will be a bit of audience participation today. Don't you worry about that. So here's another question for you, just in terms of getting a measure of whether we've got something useful from today's webinar from a best practice perspective. So who sends a welcome email automatically after a form is completed? And if the technology doesn't let me down, then hopefully Zoom should be giving you the option to answer that question now. So let's just give that a few seconds and make sure everyone is able to give us a response. I'll just give that a couple more seconds. If you're not sure, don't worry. Put no for now, and you should find out later. Great. Oh, still answers flooding in, and we will end it there. So the results are 50-50. Half of you say you do, and half of you say you don't. And that's one of the best practices we'll look at. So if you are doing that, well done, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail later on. And if not, that's perhaps one of the best practices that you might want to consider off the back of today's session. So, as I say, packed agenda. Oh, we're going to go through the features. We're going to look at best practice as well. We'll also look at use cases. So, when we talk about sign-up forms, we normally focus on, signing up to a newsletter, but there's lots of other things you can do with our sign-up forms as well. And again, we'll look at some of those kind of more diverse use cases later in the session. So, as I say, what I want to just start with is just an overview of the features in eShot. And don't worry, this isn't training, so I'm not going to go into the nth degree of detail as to exactly how all these features work. But it is certainly worthwhile you being aware of the feature set that's there, and indeed how it can be potentially used. If you're not using eShot at the moment, I know we have got a few guests today as well as customers. Don't worry, we can tell you about all that afterwards. But I just want to kind of delve in a little bit into what's inside the product because it can be confusing. So the first thing to be aware of is there's three distinct features that we're talking about when we are dealing with the area of forms in general. We have sign-up forms, we have preference centers, and then we have landing pages. And if you're using the eShot UI, they're all nested under the forms kind of main menu item there. So that's where you will find all those things. When you're logged into eShot, if those options aren't there, that means you haven't got the permissions set to access that area. And that's something you'd need to discuss with the administrator on your account. But what does each one do? Well, a sign-up form is used for adding new subscribers and for other data capture purposes. It's basically how we get new people into our eShot account. Whereas a preference center provides contact with self-service data and subscription management options. So the two are very often confused, but the best way to think about them is the sign-up form is where someone first joins your newsletter lists, and then the preference center gives them the option to leave or indeed join additional lists. So preference centers are designed for existing subscribers, and obviously sign-up forms are designed for new subscribers. And then the third feature, which I mentioned, is then landing pages. And landing pages provide us with the ability to cheat, because what we know, especially for some of our public sector customers, getting things onto your website can present some technical challenges, or you have to fill in 25 forms to be able to do it. So the landing page feature gives us a way of hosting a form, and indeed other forms of content, on the same domain that we use for your emails. So where we have what we call a VESC domain, where we are actually kind of using a URL which relates back to your organization, we can host pages on those URLs, and those pages can have our sign-up forms embedded in them, but they can include other simple content and links as well. So I just wanted to make sure those three features are explained and clear, because we do, certainly from feedback on support, we sometimes get people confused by the between the three. The other thing, just to complicate things further, if you are on the top tier of eShot, eShot Ultimate, then you will also have the options for what is called a global sign-up form and a global preference center. Okay, landing pages stays the same even if you're on that top version. But just to explain very briefly what we mean by that, is that would be applicable where you have sub-accounts, where you have different sub-accounts for the different operational areas of your organization. And in the normal sense, sign-up forms and preference centers are unique at a sub-account level. So if there's a sign-up form in sub-account A, it can't do anything in relation to a sign-up form in sub-account B. Whereas with the global version, they can be linked. Okay, so that gives you the option to actually get subscribers across a range of different disciplines throughout an organization. Now, when we look at sign-up forms specifically, there are a number of components just to building a sign-up form in eShot. Okay, so there's the form itself, the sign-up form. As I said, this isn't training, but I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the different aspects of it. The sign-up form itself, what are we asking? Do we want someone's first name and last name? We have to have their email address? What other data do we want about them? Then we have the branding. Obviously we can have your core brand on there, but you can customize it if you're using sub brands as well, and we can customize fonts, colors, etc., etc. Excuse me. We also then have the confirmation page. Okay, so this is what is triggered once someone hits sign up on the form. So it's important, that once they do submit the form, that something happens to reassure them that the form has been submitted successfully, and that's the confirmation page. What then would normally happen when we talk about best practice, which is double opt-in, is an email is triggered, an opt-in email, whereby they have to confirm that yes, it was actually them that signed up to this via this form. And then once they do confirm that, there's then another confirmation page, which is labeled the final confirmation, which is basically saying, yes, you have now completed the sign-up journey. Okay, so just be mindful of the distinction between those two things. The confirmation page, hello, you've asked to subscribe, check your email. Final confirmation, thank you for checking your email and clicking confirm, you are now a subscriber. And then the next step, which is entirely optional, but again, we'll talk about this more in at the best practice stage, is you can then trigger a further welcome email. And that is your opportunity to shine. That's your opportunity to say, well, hey, great, now you are a subscriber. Let's tell you about some of the cool things that we're up to. Okay. Last but not least, we have the publish options, and I could do a 3-hour webinar just on that, of all the geeky things that are available in there, where you can customize the CSS and get different embed codes, and there are help documents galore on our website about all that. But indeed, the team can help you with those sometimes quite technical aspects of deploying a sign-up form to your website. As I say, we also have the get out of jail free card of being able to deploy one of our sign-up forms to a landing page to alleviate the issue of having to get a form embedded on your website. So as I say, I just wanted to give you that brief overview of what we have on the platform as far as the different aspects of setting up a sign-up form, because quite often when customers hit support, wanting assistance with a sign-up form, they're fine with the form bit itself, but it's all these other steps that they're not quite clear on what needs to be done. And that's why when we look at things from a best practice perspective today, I'm going to touch on some of those form elements, but from the perspective of showing you what best practice looks like, and indeed, giving you some help and advice as to what you should do with those different elements of the form setup journey. So we have a relatively succinct list of things that we regard as best practices when it comes to deploying sign-up forms. Okay, and the first one, if you've ever been to Forefront HQ, you will see there's a big sign on the door which says "We make it simple," and I would strongly endorse the concept of making your sign-up forms simple as well, because when a sign-up form is simple, it tends to attract more subscribers. Okay, so by default on the platform, we will ask for first name, last name, and email address. Those are the 3 fields that by default eShop will ask for when you create a new sign-up form. The only one that's required, the only one that's essential, is the email address. We can't process it without an email address, but we can process it without first name and last name. So always consider that less fields and less options tends to mean more subscriptions. And I saw a piece of research quite some time ago that said, that for every field you add to the form, the response rate drops by 5%. So if you don't need their last name, don't ask for it. Now, in the form controls itself, that's very easy. So when you actually build your form, you'll get on the left the list of, so I've just realized my camera's back to front. On the left, you get the list of fields that are available in your account, and on the right, you then get the options that you've selected for the form. So as I say, the only one that you absolutely must have in there every time is email. But yes, of course, you can include first name and indeed other fields as well. And then, if your form is for a professional audience, if you're using the accounts feature in eShop Ultimate, then again, it's a good shout to ask for things like a company name, where we are dealing with a professional audience rather than consumers or members of the public. And again, with each option on the form, you have the ability to make it required or optional. Okay, so there's a lot of configuration there, but the general principle is only ask for the information that you need. Only ask for the information that you can act upon. Okay, and when I say act upon, what I would normally say with that is it will be things whereby you can use that data point from a kind of insights perspective. Am I seeing trends from a certain type of subscriber, or indeed can I use that data point for segmentation and targeting? Okay, now when we talk about segmentation and targeting, there's then an important consideration in terms of what other options you put on that sign up form, because by default your fields will be free text. Okay, so if you want to use a field to segment and target someone, then just consider, should they just be able to put whatever they like? If it's something like you're asking for a profession, job titles can be very, very varied nowadays. So it's very difficult to kind of have a free text job title field whereby you actually can make any sense out of all the different submissions that people make on it. Whereas what you can do if you hop over to the contact field manager in eShop is you can set what we call a pick list, and that's where you can restrict the options in a field to a predefined list. And the advantage of doing it that way is A, it's simpler for people to fill in the form because they can just choose the option rather than have to type things in. And B, it ensures that you get a structured data point. So as I say, less is more. Don't ask for anything more than you need on a sign-up form. Always minimize the amount of information, but where it is important that you do get a piece of information, consider whether you make it required or optional, and indeed consider whether you give it structure with a pick list. So, sorry, I meant to mention right at the beginning, for some reason, I know a few of you have joined us a couple of minutes late. I have got a few of the team waiting behind the wings today to help with the webinar. So as I'm going through things, because it's a recorded session, we've got quite a few people on, I'm not going to take questions to the floor during the session itself. However, you can use the Q&A function within the webinar to ask questions of the team. So if anything crops up as we're going through that you think, oh, I'd like to know a little bit more about that, ask away using the Q&A. The team can respond. And indeed, what we'll try and do on the basis that I haven't miscalculated my timings is we'll have a little bit of time at the end to then take a few of those questions and talk about them more generally. So please, the whole point of this session is to provide help to you all. So if there's additional things you'd like to know, then please ask away using the Q&A. Now, next thing I want to ask you about is using double opt-in, okay? Double opt-in is what we recommend as standard. So all your forms should be double opt-in. But can you tell me why? Why do we recommend double opt-in, okay? And you should just be able to type some text in here. Give me some thoughts and some ideas on why you think double opt-in is important. There are no wrong answers to this one, by the way. Well, there may be, but we'll see. I'll just give that a few more seconds. It's fine. I will go through the reasons as well. So if you're not sure, then it's not a problem. It's all the questions and polls are optional. Fab. So I'm just going to end the poll there then. And let's have a look at what we've said. That's funny. It's not showing me what we've said. What have we said? Confirmation shows that it's actually worked. Yep. Great answer. GDPR, of course. Confirmation for the subscriber. Comply with the GDPR. Security. Better quality contacts and no bots. Yes. Don't even know what it is. Okay, we'll talk about that in more detail. Security reduces the amount of emails being marked as spam. GDPR and avoiding typos in email addresses. Yeah, very good one there. To confirm the recipient is certain that they want to subscribe, and of course, yes, GDPR again. Okay. Those are great answers. Well done. You will get a gold star and can have an extra cookie afterwards. The three kind of succinct reasons that I normally give is as some of you have suggested, it protects from spam. Okay. What we've seen, with some customers is your websites get attacked and various different nasties try and inject thousands of email addresses into your forms. And although we have many technological countermeasures to stop that, every now and then something sneaks through. So it does provide you with a degree of protection from your database being polluted with dodgy addresses. And yes, certainly, again, as a couple of you mentioned, it protects from spelling errors. It's an incredibly common issue with sign-up forms is people don't actually type in their email address quick, partly because it's something they know so well. They're very quick with the typing, and indeed that's where errors creep in. I think we did see a couple of people misspelt their email address in the sign-up form for this webinar. But the other one to be aware of is it helps with inbox placement. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Unfortunately, in the cybersecurity conscious age in which we live, there is a presumption of guilt until proven innocent with our friends at the various cybersecurity and spam filtration tools. Okay, and what that means is, for in some situations now, and particularly for particularly security conscious companies, the moment a new email comes from an unrecognized location, someone who's never emailed you before, it's treated as dangerous. Okay, it can go into junk, it can go into quarantine, it can experience difficulties getting to the inbox. Okay, so when you use single opt-in, you don't send that email. Probably you just let people join your database, and then the first thing that you're likely to send them is a newsletter, which might be some time after they've signed up. So because that cybersecurity tool, overzealous cybersecurity tool, is in a kind of mode of, well, I'm not letting anything through unless the user tells me they want it, then you can end up losing subscribers before you've even really got them. Whereas the double opt-in, especially with the confirmation message, instructing people to go to their inbox and find that email at the point where they sign up, what that does is it means even if the email does get intercepted, they will then go and consciously find it, and they will teach their mailbox that actually this is an email that they want. Okay, and then what should happen from that point forward is the spam filter or cybersecurity tool should say, oh, actually, no, you pulled that confirmation message out of spam last time, and therefore it's fine, and we're happy for you to continue getting emails from it. And that's why it's important that those double opt-in emails come from us as well, because it needs to come from the same sending infrastructure as your normal newsletters are coming from to make sure the spam filter sees it as safe. Okay, so double opt-in protects you, it protects your subscribers, and it generally just leads to a better experience all round, a more reliable database. Okay. Next piece of best practice to talk to you about is including privacy statements and links in your sign-up forms. Okay, it's very, very important that we tell people why we're doing what we're doing when we ask them for their personal details. And an email address is considered as a piece of personal data. If you are as geeky as me and you do wild and crazy things like actually read the GDPR, you will see that Article 13 states that you must provide people with privacy information at the time when personal data is obtained. Okay, so although you may have a privacy policy on your website, it's very important that we show that privacy policy to people at the point where we're asking them for their data. Okay, it's the law. Okay, but it also represents best practice, and in much the same way that we are saying, keep the number of sign-up form elements to a minimum, having a privacy policy link, and indeed for those who are concerned about data privacy and what have you, being able to reassure themselves that you are doing things properly and using data in a correct manner is really, really important to give them the confidence to actually fill that form in the first place. So let's look at a best practice example. I think we've got a couple of the team from the Department of, not the Department for, which is a mistake I always make, the Department of Health and Social Care with us today. The DHSC website, which is actually the gov.uk website, they have a dedicated page on there, which isn't just their privacy notice in the more general sense, they have those too, but it is an email subscription specific privacy notice. And within that privacy notice, it sets out what they're going to do with the data, and indeed it does name drop the fact that it's us that is going to host that email service for them. Okay, so it's absolutely fine to tell the world that it's eShot working under the hood, and again, that level of transparency, that level of professionalism will just make people have the confidence that when they submit their data to you, it's going to be safe. Okay, so again, you should have a privacy notice on your forms. That's a best practice, but if you want to be absolutely to the letter of the law, it should be a specific privacy notice which covers how you're using email specifically and potentially how you're using it with us. Next bit of best practice is the ability, well, the function within eShot, but again, it represents best practices to customize the confirmation messages and emails that we send in that form process. So if you remember earlier on, we talked about in the form journey, you can configure confirmation pages, opt-in emails, etc., etc. By default, eShot will give you standard text, which is absolutely fine. but you may wish to consider changing that to make it specific to you and indeed branding it. Okay, so upon submission of the sign up form, we can show a thank you message or we can show a custom page. When we send the opt-in email can be a standard email that's produced out of eShot, or indeed, excuse me, it could be a custom email. Okay, so you have the ability to change the text to whatever you like. You have the ability to actually change it to a bespoke email rather than standard email, and you can do whatever you like with that. But I would suggest it's something you review, and again, look for an opportunity to ensure, a little bit like we talked about with the privacy notice and and things, everything's aligned and everything makes sense in terms of what you're actually doing. Okay, so if we look at how that works, basically you have to have this special piece of dynamic content in your email. So if you actually want to design your own confirmation email, it's very important that this sign up confirmation URL piece of dynamic content goes into your design, because that's how eShot knows to put one of those special confirmation links in there. But if we just look at how that then manifests itself in terms of a couple of best practice examples, I will stand out the way a little bit. This is a confirmation message from Surrey County Council. They have a brand called Surrey Matters, which is their newsletter brand. And again, just from the very first impression is this is being done professionally. It's not some kind of unbranded, not particularly safe looking email. It is something where absolutely you can have confidence from the word go that, again, this is a professional organization. When I give them my data and when I confirm that I do want to sign up, they're doing things properly. So that's really, really important. Again, making a great first impression. This is the first email that you are ever going to send a new subscriber, so it should be a good one, even though it is quite functional. What I wouldn't do is use the confirmation email as a way of promoting other content. So don't use it as an advert. It should be the kind of straight-laced stuff of confirming the subscription. The welcome email that we'll talk about later on is the best place for the other one. Here's another one from National Audit Office. Again, professional, on brand, just sets the tone, and indeed, but can do things like start to share social links and other elements that you might want to drive people to as well. So if someone has an interest in you as an organization, is their interest limited to email, or perhaps could you start to get them poking around your website or other properties as well? But as I say, there's a balance there. It's not a promotional email. It is a transactional email as such. So consider customizing those confirmation messages, and then as we talked about in that first poll, half of you have got a welcome email, half of you haven't. If you had to take one of these best practices today, this is the one I would endorse the most strongly, because again, this is that opportunity once more to make a first impression. When you create a form in eShot, by default, this will be unchecked. It's not something we're forcing you to do. So you do have to go to step 6 of the sign up form journey, and you need to select send a welcome email. And then indeed, you do need to select a design. It's not one where we have a standard email, because it is an opportunity for you to show off. Okay. So, again, think about it in the context of giving a new subscriber confidence that what they are signing up for is going to be good, building anticipation for what you're going to do in the future with them. And indeed, this is where you can potentially then start to promote and advertise other things. So if we look at this example here for Essex's fostering mailing list, they are straight away thanking you for confirming your details. And then the other thing they're doing with that is they're saying, well, are you interested in other things? Because actually, as a council, we have lots of other newsletters that you could sign up to. So consider a welcome email in the process, and consider, as I say, that welcome email could drive people to the preference center, because now they are a subscriber. We don't need to put them to the sign up form anymore. We can put them to the preference center, where potentially they could choose from a range of other subscriptions, if you do have a lot of newsletters, and potentially deepen their relationship with you as well. Sorry, Zoom's just coming up with some weird message. The other thing with that is, when you are doing the sign up form, then obviously you can get people to sign up for one specific thing. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we talk about use cases later on as well. But when we choose what people are signing up for, we have that option of saying, here's the options for you to sign up, or indeed you're signing up for one specific thing. And when we use those two things in tandem, then obviously what we have the opportunity to do is use the sign up form to get them to subscribe to something specific. But then the preference center, which could be presented to them from the welcome email, can give them the opportunity to sign up to other things as well, or indeed to present other information. The other thing that you can do off the back of a welcome email is you might say, actually, I don't want a welcome email. What I want is a welcome series. And that's where, if you know the automated series tool with an eShot, you could actually trigger a whole sequence of emails off the back of that new sign up rather than one. Okay, so again, not essential, but again, would be considered best practice. Certainly sending something to a new subscriber is the kind of minimum standard, but it doesn't have to be one thing. It could be, you could take them through a whole journey. So those are my best practice recommendations for using our sign up tools to devastate in a devastatingly effective way. And as I say, even if you do just a couple of those things, my sense is you should see an improvement overall in both the number of signups you get and indeed the engagement from those new subscribers. Let's have a look now at some of the use cases for the tech though. Okay, we can put sign up. Sorry, it's absolutely chucking it down with rain here. Hopefully you can't hear that through my headphones. Once we have a sign up form, then we have various different options for where we can put it and what we can do with it. Okay, we can embed the form on a website page. Okay, so we can take the code for the form and we can embed it in a static format on a web page. But we also have the ability to create pop-ups, or what are sometimes referred to as light boxes. So rather than it being a case of the form is embedded on the page and you've got to go and find it, you can proactively present sign-up forms to people as part of a website journey using our forms as well. As I said earlier in the session as well, the other way we have that we can approach it is to show the form on a landing page as well, and that obviously adds some simplicity to things because we don't need to do anything special on the website. We can just link to the landing page. So let's have a look at a couple of examples of those different methods. On our own website, you will see if you hit the contact button or scroll around our website, various pop-ups are triggered proactively, and indeed, this doesn't look much like a normal sign-up form because we can customize the look and feel of it. We can customize the functions to quite a high degree. In the same way we talked about having structured fields earlier on, we can have a field, a long form field, where people can submit an inquiry and they can actually use our sign up forms, as I say, beyond that kind of newsletter sign up scenario. This is an example of a pop-up on our website. If we look at Surrey, again, contextually in the news section of their website, which is the obvious place that you would want to promote your newsletter, as you are browsing around the Surrey website, the pop-up will then drive you to the sign-up form. However, in this scenario, they're actually driving us to our landing page. So it's a combination of those technologies. As I say, there's so many different ways we can do this. The consideration for you is, what do I want? Do I passively just want to get subscribers when they come to my homepage or a landing page on my website? Do I want to link from other locations rather than my website? Or indeed, when they are on my website, do I want to proactively try and get subscribers? And indeed, you can do all those things. Okay, here's an example of a sign-up form embedded on a website. This is Brent Council. This is their website, but embedded in their website is our form. Okay, and again, it's got a kind of selection of topics that you can choose there to subscribe. They also ask for you to check the box to confirm that you're happy with that privacy policy, etc., etc. So again, that's a feature to consider. And this one is an example of a landing page. So this is the National Archives. Rather than putting our form on their website, we put the form on the eShot landing page, but indeed we do mimic the style. We can take the CSS from their website and we can mimic that within the landing page setup as well, to make it look on brand, so that then the journey from their website to the sign up form, although it's a different website, it's effectively our website, our landing page rather than their website, the sign up form journey looks seamless because the sign up form looks a lot like the website. What you will see when you create eShot sign up forms is they all look fairly similar as far as the kind of the main look and feel, and that look and feel is kind of predefined because it's a best practice one. It's carries a lot of the hallmarks that you'll see on gov.uk forms as well. So the fields are all accessible, it's responsive, and generally speaking, unless you need to, just leave the formatting of our forms alone because it will make sure that your form is bulletproof. However, as I said, you can overrule the styling, etc., if you wish to. So we've talked about a couple of use cases there, and again, I just want to kind of get a sense of what you think on things. We could have a sign-up form for all newsletters. Okay, if you remember that Brent example, had a long list of potential options, or indeed we can offer a sign-up form for a specific newsletter. So I just want to get a sense what you think would be the best approach to attract more subscribers. Do you think a sign-up form for a specific newsletter or a sign-up form for all newsletters is going to attract more subscribers? Indeed, there's also potentially, that those two things perform equally. What do you think? We'll just give it a couple more seconds for people to have a think about that one. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll there. We've got a strong swing towards signing up for a specific newsletter rather than a sign-up form for all newsletters. And for the 72% that gave the answer of sign up for a specific newsletter, generally speaking, you are right. When I look at sign-up forms across the platform, the ones for a specific newsletter sign up tend to perform better, okay? And I believe there's several aspects to consider as to why that is the case. Firstly, back to what we talked about earlier on in terms of best practices, keeping the form simple. So if you do have a lot of newsletters as an organization, it can be a bit of an overwhelming choice to offer people, huge lists of things that they could potentially sign up to. It's not to say that that doesn't have a place, and you should probably have that main form on your website. But in my experience, if you are looking to get more subscribers, then offering people the choice to sign up to something specific tends to work well. The other reason I believe the results tend to go in favor of a specific sign-up form is when you have a specific sign-up form, where you put it tends to be more targeted. Okay, so if there is a particular topic, a particular brand, a particular area which you are promoting, you can obviously capture subscribers in the context of a specific interest area, because it is one of those things where, are people just looking for newsletters in generally, or are they looking for more information on a particular topic? So a lot of the time when you are offering a sign up for something specific, it's going to come off the back of them having already been looking at that particular area on your website. Now, in terms of what I wouldn't suggest for a second is you therefore go and get rid of all your sign-up forms that have multiple choice on them and only have specific newsletter versions. But what I would contend is it's probably sensible to think about having both. Okay. So just consider, what is the likely scenario for people wanting to sign up? Are they coming to your website, looking for your news section, and picking a selection of things to sign up to? Or are they going to be looking for information on something specific, and then when they see that you have a newsletter on that topic, that then attracts them? So this is an example of one of those very specific signups. For Surrey, they have their Greener Matters. It's a climate change newsletter. And again, we don't have any options there. We just have the first name, last name, email address, and subscribe. So again, we can do these things in all these different ways. They also have the sign up form where we get everybody. And when I looked at the results of that over the last 3 months, the specific sign up forms had got 70% more sign ups than the generic one. As I said, though, I'm not suggesting for a second you should get rid of the mega sign-up forms. They do have a place. There will be people, and certainly, when we look at professional audiences whereby they're interested in you as an organization, perhaps more than kind of, consumers, residents, other stakeholder groups, then obviously we do see plenty of examples of people signing up to absolutely everything. Let's say there are lots of use cases for our forms, though. Okay, so for example, the Norfolk Resilience Forum, although they do send newsletters, their sign-up form is actually to get alerts. So we can use the use cases for our sign-up forms are myriad. It doesn't just have to be for newsletters. And indeed, back to that concept of the value exchange, if you have a specific sign-up form in a particular place on your website, then obviously what you want is for people to sign up to the newsletter, but you might offer them some other value proposition as to why they sign up to the newsletter. Give us your email address and we will send you a guide on this thing. And indeed, if there is a commercial aspect to your proposition, then it's a very, very common thing for people to offer, free shipping or a discount code or some other aspect of, give us your email address, which effectively gives us permission to communicate with you and market to you in the longer term. When you give us that email address, there's some sort of commercial benefit for you for your next transaction. Again, a very common way of doing things. We can also present our sign-up forms in a more holistic way. Okay, and what I mean by that, this is one of the sign-up forms for DEFRA. What we quite often see is people will configure sign-up forms where they go sign up to this newsletter 1, newsletter 2, newsletter 3. DEFRA take a different approach where they say, tell us the topics that you're interested in. So rather than saying you're signing up for a particular newsletter, what they ask you to do is sign up to news groups where they can then make decisions, with their next newsletter. Because there's content on these particular subjects, I can then select the people that are interested in the environment or food and drink or plant health or a combination of those things. And it gives me more flexibility as to who I then target with my newsletter. So again, whether you have a use case for a newsletter where it is not necessarily to signing up for something specific, if you do want to offer people choices, think about how those choices can be meaningful for them, and indeed think about how it can give you flexibility in terms of what you then send to others. Okay, and that opens up one of the areas which I just want to kind of cover off at the latter stage of this webinar, that we see a lot of confusion with amongst customers. Okay, when to use groups and when to use preferences. Okay, because they are different things, and we do get a lot of confusion. If you ask some members of the team, they'll give you a very clear-cut answer. Groups are for this and preferences are for that. And I'm a little bit more on the fence with this one. It kind of depends. Okay, so if we take the kind of standard use case, then preferences are for self-service lists where the subscriber is in control of what they want to receive. Okay, preferences you shouldn't touch. You shouldn't, generally speaking, be uploading data to a preference. You should be letting your subscribers choose to opt in and indeed opt out of certain publications or topics that you offer. Okay, groups are when you then want to control the audience. Okay, that's the normal use case for them. Okay, so they do operate separately. Preferences, opt-in, opt-out, groups. I want to choose to send an email to this cohort of people based on a demographic element of who they are, or some other factor where you are in control of the targeting. Okay. However, the sign-up forms and indeed the preference center do allow you to present both groups and preferences to your subscribers. Okay. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but I just wanted to make this point because it is one of these things where the more you understand about the functions and what's available to you and how you can use them, the more able you are then to devise a methodology which suits your communication strategy. Okay, so let's have a look at an example of someone using both groups and preferences on a sign-up form. This is Sefton Council, and they have the usual suspects: first name, last name, email, etc., etc. And then they have preferences. Okay, so they offer you various different newsletter or kind of types of email that you can sign up to. Okay, so in this scenario, the preferences represent what the subscriber is interested in. Okay, but then they also present groups on their sign-up form, which represent where the subscriber is, because when you're running a council, geography is a really, really important aspect of knowing your subscriber base, especially if you're operating over a large geographical area. Then obviously, although we might have different topics of news that we want to talk to people about, when we can also talk, be a bit more targeted and say, well, here is the news for the north of the borough, and here is the news for the south of the borough. That ability to target people is very, very useful. Okay, so in this scenario, they use both preferences and groups in tandem on their newsletter sign-up form to ensure that not only do they capture what people are interested in, but where they're interested in as well. Okay, so as I say, groups and preferences, it is complicated. They are for different core use cases, but there is then a blur in the line, a blurred line somewhere in the sand in terms of how you can potentially use them in different sign-up form scenarios. Cool. So one of the things that you're probably thinking as you're going through this with me today is, well, crumbs, I've only got the one sign-up form on my website, and we've talked about a lot of different potential possibilities here. And that's one of the cool things about what we do with eShot, is there is no limit to the number of sign-up forms that you can create. In your account, you can have as many as you like, okay? And indeed, that can, as we talked about in the use case scenario, that can cover a myriad of different use cases. One of the ones I've been helping a few customers with recently, they have call centers where people phone up and they're talking about various topics, and the part of the call center script is, would you like to subscribe to our newsletter? And when people say yes, then they're manually logging into eShot and adding them. But the problem with that is, same problems as we talked about earlier on. What about mistyped email addresses? What about that kind of inbox placement side of things? So you can create a sign-up form which is just for your use internally, where when you type in the details, actually it triggers a confirmation message to them saying, thank you for contacting our team today. You asked to be subscribed to the newsletter. Click here to do it. Okay, so you can have your sign up form for the website, and then you can have your sign up form for your contact team, your customer service team as well. They do the same thing. They ultimately lead to the same place, but obviously the messaging can be varied. So just consider all the different use cases, all the different places on your website that you might have a sign up form. Perhaps you have sign up forms on your social channels. Perhaps you have sign up forms which your team can use internally. But the real value of using sign up forms, as opposed to manually uploading spreadsheets into eShot or manually adding contacts within the user interface, is we get that really robust audit trail. We know we've got a subscriber. We know they've opted in. They've received an email from us confirming their subscription before we get to the point where we send a newsletter. And that would also represent best practice. Okay. More signups equals more contacts. The other thing that will enable you to do, if you do have lots of different sign-up forms, is it will give you better source attribution. Okay, so we'll be able to then start to say, well, where are our subscribers coming from? Are they coming from the pop-ups and the light boxes, or are they coming from the website? Are they coming from a particular social channel, or are they coming from internal, contact center methods to sign up? So when we have lots of sign-up forms and we start tracking where people are coming from, then obviously it gives you some really useful insight as to where things are coming from. And indeed, when we have those different sign-up forms as well, we can align it with the preference center. So, we can still give people the option of signing up to everything, even if we start with asking them to sign up to something specific. So in conclusion, I love our forms. Obviously, I'm biased, but I hope you will too. They're highly configurable. They are automatically responsive and accessible, but equally you can over all those things. They're easily cloned. So when I say about having lots of sign-up forms, usually what would be a good shout is you have your master form and then you just copy it when you need other ones. We do take a leaf out of the gov.uk kind of best practice book for how they look. So therefore, that's why we are, you saw the DHC and the DEFRA ones earlier on. We do have lots of our sign-up forms which are linked to from the gov.uk website, and obviously, we have to have a high bar of quality to make sure that's allowed. There are also various automation options, as say the welcome emails, the welcome series. Consider that honeymoon period when you have a new subscriber. That's the time to send them a lot of emails, and people will be highly tolerant of quite a lot of emails in that early stage of being a new subscriber. And really, the thing I love the most is the versatility of the tools combined. There's not many things that we get asked to do with a form that there isn't some way of doing, even if it does involve a little bit of a hack sometimes. So that's about it for me today. I hope you found that useful and interesting. If you do want to stick around, then by all means we can take a few questions. I have seen the little Q&A icon buzzing away on the top, and hopefully the team have been helping. But equally, if there's stuff that we want to talk about at the end here, we do have a few minutes left, and I'm very happy to take a few questions. If you do want to steal that extra 10 minutes for lunch though, then by all means, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you found that really, really useful. So, Harry, are you alive and well in the background there? Let's have a look at the Q&A, shall we? We got someone who has said pop-ups are notoriously not accessible. Is the eShop pop-up compliant with WCAG guidelines? So the answer there is it depends how you implement the pop-up on your website. So that will kind of come down to a range of factors. Whether it's a JavaScript lightbox or an embed, the thing we tend to avoid nowadays is iframes. Those are the ones that really do tend to be a headache from an accessibility perspective. So yes, the kind of cop-out answer there on whether the pop-up is accessible or not is it depends on how we're putting that pop-up on your website. And we got a question from Chris. If someone signs up to Waterloo and another Whitby as a group, then both have waste management as a preference, is there a way they can get different emails based on the location when emails go out to the waste management preference center? Yeah. So what you would do with that one, Chris, is you would simply go in your audience selection, you would pick the preference and the group. And what will then happen is eShop will work out what the delta is. Okay. So you have effectively your waste management for Waterloo campaign, where you pick both the preference and the group, and it'll give you the delta of the subscribers. And then you do your other email to the waste management preference for Whitby, and that gives you the delta for that combination. So that, if you think back to that Sefton example that I looked at towards the end there, if we jump back to that slide, that's exactly that use case. Is kind of okay, so I've asked about bin collection dates. Do I want to tell the whole borough when a bin collection date changes, if it is a bin collection date for one particular area? So I can say, give me all the people that have asked for bin collection emails, and indeed give me all the people that have asked for, well, Waterloo. And then eShop will automatically create that delta within the audience targeting. And another question from Aaron. How many would you say is too many within a month for new subscribers? So it kind of depends on the subject matter, Aaron, on that one. So, we talked about fostering earlier on when I looked at the Essex example. I've done a fair bit of work on that. I would say that is one where it's slow and steady. Fostering is a long-term consideration. If you want to become a foster carer, it can be a journey that can take up to 6 years. So it's daft to send them tons of emails in very quick succession. At the other end of the spectrum, when you look at kind of fast-moving consumer goods, if you look at a lot of consumer brands already use these technologies. On TripAdvisor, if you're looking at a location and you're kind of poking around their hotels, they'll send you 2 emails within 24 hours, and then quite a few more over the course of the next kind of 7 days, because it's one of those situations where unless you capture people there and then, they've probably gone and booked elsewhere. So go as hard and as fast as the normal customer journey will tolerate. Okay. And that's one of those things you can test. If you see people unsubscribing from your welcome series, you've overcooked it and you need to slow it down a little bit. And let's have a look. We've got a few more questions. I have found that some of the new subscribers might not have received my newsletter because I didn't select a preference list before sending out campaigns. This is because I see never sent registering its names. Is that right? Sorry, I don't know who that is because it says anonymous attendee, but I think probably the best bet is we need to look at that one via support. So if you're able to jump on the live chat when you're logged in, and the team can have a look at that. I don't actually know why. If normally if someone has come via a sign up form, they will have signed up to at least something. It could be the form's misconfigured, or it could be that there's some mismatch between the groups and the preferences. So I think we'd have to look at that one in a bit more detail. And then it's telling me that everything else has been answered. So Harry, is there any I've missed?
No, I think that's all of them. Yeah.
Fab. Okay. Well, I hope that's been helpful for everyone, and I can see we've got a few people that have stuck around. After the session today, assuming the technology hasn't failed me, you'll be getting a recording and some other follow-up information. There'll be some links to some of the kind of how-to guides on how to create the forms. Certainly, if it's an area of eShop that you haven't visited recently, don't worry. It can be a little bit scary, but the team are there, ready, willing, and able to help. So, when you have a look at it, and if you do have questions, then just please jump on the live chat, and we'd be happy to assist getting you to set up new forms, amend the existing ones, etc., etc. And by some miracle, we've actually finished our webinar on time. I can see there's a few thank yous coming in, and I really appreciate you all coming and joining me today on this lovely sunny Thursday morning, and I really hope that was useful, and hopefully see you on another one of our webinars soon. Thanks very much, and goodbye.